Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The icy wind bit into Galen's skin as he made his way through the darkened woods. His breath came in sharp gasps, each step a jolt of pain through his battered body. The battle had been weeks ago, but the wounds were deeper than flesh. His spirit, once fierce and unbreakable, had cracked. He clenched his fists against the cold, the bitter reality of his situation setting in. No healer in the land could repair the damage that had been done to him. No potion, no spell, nothing. Except for the blood of the white dragon, for weeks, Galen had followed rumors, chasing fleeting whispers across the land like a man grasping at smoke. They spoke of an ancient creature, a being so powerful that its blood held the key to rebirth. It was said to lie in the far reaches of the frozen peaks, where the mountains reached for the sky, a place where no man had returned from. Most believed the white dragon was a legend, a myth used to scare children into their beds. But Galen didn't have the luxury of doubting old stories. The journey had taken everything from him. His companions had fallen, one by one, to the dangers that lurked in the frozen wilderness. Wolves, bandits, and the bitter cold had claimed their lives, and now Galen stood alone, the last of his company, trudging onward toward what he could only hope was salvation. The peaks loomed ahead, jagged and unforgiving, their tips shrouded in mist. He pulled his cloak tighter, though the fabric had long since ceased to offer warmth. His sword, once gleaming and sharp, now hung heavy at his side, dulled by too many fights and too little care. But he would not turn back. He couldn't. As the last light of day faded from the sky, Galen spotted something on the horizon. A faint glow, barely perceptible through the storm clouds. His heart quickened, and he pushed forward with renewed determination. He was close. The legend spoke of a cave nestled high within the mountains, hidden from the world, where the last of the dragons lay in eternal slumber. Galen's mind wandered as he climbed the rocky path. He thought of the stories told by the old warriors in the taverns, men who had fought in the great dragon wars centuries ago. They spoke of dragons as monsters, creatures of fire and destruction, who razed entire villages and devoured men whole. Their blood was said to be a curse, but also a gift, healing wounds and granting immortality to those who drank it. But it came with a price. The blood of a dragon carried with it the weight of their sorrow, their pain, their memories. His foot slipped on the icy rock, pulling him back to the present. Galen steadied himself and continued. As he neared the glow, the wind seemed to die, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. He could feel the weight of the place pressing down on him, as if the very air carried the burden of ancient power. His hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, though he knew it would do little good against a creature as old and powerful as the white dragon. The entrance to the cave was larger than he had imagined, a massive arch of stone carved into the side of the mountain. It was covered in ice, glittering like glass in the faint light. He hesitated at the threshold, his breath shallow. This was it. The end of his journey, or perhaps the end of him. Taking a deep breath, Galen stepped inside. The cave was impossibly vast, stretching far beyond what the eye could see. His footsteps echoed in the cold air as he made his way deeper into the darkness. The walls were smooth, polished by centuries of wind and time. Strange markings covered the stone, symbols he couldn't understand but felt ancient beyond comprehension. And then, he saw it, lying in the center of the cavern, curled around itself like a mountain of white marble, was the white dragon. Its scales shimmered in the faint light, reflecting every color of the spectrum, though white dominated all. The creature was massive, larger than anything Galen had ever seen. Its head alone was the size of a small house, and its tail coiled endlessly around the cavern, disappearing into the shadows. The dragon's eyes were closed, its chest rising and falling with deep, slow breaths. For a moment, Galen stood frozen, unable to move or speak. The sight was overwhelming. This was no monster. This was something far older, far more majestic, than anything he could have imagined. He approached cautiously, each step feeling like a violation of the sacred space. His heart pounded in his chest, his mouth dry. He needed to speak, to call out to the creature, but his voice caught in his throat. What could he say? What words could possibly be enough to explain why he had come? Before he could find his voice, the dragon stirred. Its massive head lifted, and two glowing eyes opened, fixing on Galen. The warrior froze, every instinct screaming at him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. The dragon's gaze held him in place, not with malice or threat, but with an overwhelming sense of sadness. Human. The voice that filled the cavern wasn't spoken aloud, but echoed inside Galen's mind, ancient and tired. Why have you come? Galen swallowed hard, struggling to find the words. I seek your blood, he managed to choke out. To heal my wounds. The dragon's eyes narrowed slightly, though its expression remained unreadable. My blood, the voice echoed, filled with sorrow. Do you know what you ask? Galen felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside. He had come too far to turn back now. I have no other choice, he said, his voice steadier now. I'm dying. Your blood is my only hope. For a long moment, the dragon was silent, its glowing eyes studying him. Then, slowly, it uncoiled its massive body, rising to its full height. Galen took an involuntary step back, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword, though he knew it would be useless against such a creature. You are not the first to seek my blood, the dragon said, its voice heavy with the weight of centuries. And you will not be the last. But do you understand the price? Galen frowned. Price? The blood of a dragon is not a gift, the creature said, lowering its head to Galen's level. It is a curse. Those who drink it are forever changed. You will live, yes, but at a cost. You will carry my memories, my pain, my sorrow. You will be bound to me, and to the world I once knew. Galen's heart raced. He hadn't expected this. The stories hadn't mentioned any of this. I don't care, he said, though doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. I need to live. The dragon's gaze softened, and for the first time, Galen saw the creature's true nature. This was not the monster the stories had painted it to be. This was a being of immense wisdom and suffering, hunted to the brink of extinction by the greed of men. You do not need to die, the dragon said softly. But neither do I. Galen's hand fell away from his sword, his resolve crumbling. He had come here to kill, to take what he needed by force if necessary. But now, standing before this ancient being, he couldn't do it. He couldn't be the one to snuff out the last of its kind. His voice broke, his eyes stinging with unexpected emotion. I'm sorry. The dragon tilted its head slightly, as if surprised by the words. You are the first to offer such an apology, it said. Perhaps there is hope for your kind after all. Galen's legs buckled, and he sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. He had come here to save himself, but now he realized that there was something far greater at stake. The silence in the cavern stretched out as Galen knelt before the white dragon, his body trembling from exhaustion and the enormity of his decision. The dragon's gaze, though ancient and weary, seemed to soften further as it regarded him. A quiet hum filled the air, vibrating through the stone, as if the very earth responded to the presence of such a creature. "I cannot offer you salvation without consequence," the dragon's voice echoed in his mind, soft but resolute. "But I can offer you a choice." Galen slowly lifted his head, his eyes meeting the dragon's once more. He felt the weight of the world in that gaze, centuries of pain, betrayal, and loss. The warrior had seen death, had taken countless lives in battle, but this was different. The creature before him was not a mindless beast. It was a victim. A relic of a forgotten era. "You may take my blood," the dragon continued. "You may heal yourself, live to fight another day. But know this, you will carry my memories with you for as long as you live. My pain will become your pain, my sorrows will become your sorrows. You will be bound to me, and the weight of this bond is not light." Galen's hand instinctively moved to his side, where the deep wound throbbed, reminding him of why he had come. He thought of the battles yet to be fought, the victories he had dreamed of, the warrior's life he had always known. But now, in the stillness of this ancient cave, those dreams felt hollow. "What happens if I refuse?" Galen asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The dragon's head tilted slightly, and the hum in the air grew louder, as though the very cave itself were responding to his question. "If you refuse, you will die here, as many before you have. Your body will return to the earth, and your name will be forgotten. But the choice is yours." Galen's breath hitched in his throat. He had fought so hard to get here, endured so much. The thought of dying now, after all he had sacrificed, seemed unbearable. Yet the thought of living with the weight of the dragon's memories, the eternal burden of its suffering, was almost worse. That he closed his eyes, his mind racing, searching for some other way, some path that would let him live without paying this terrible price. But there was none. The dragon's blood was his only hope, and with it came a lifetime of pain that was not his own. His voice faltered, and he clenched his fists. He had never known doubt like this. Every decision in his life had been clear: kill or be killed, fight or fall. But now, faced with the enormity of what lay before him, he felt paralyzed. The dragon waited, its glowing eyes never leaving him. "I can't." Galen's voice broke. "I can't be the one to end you. You don't deserve this." The dragon's eyes seemed to glow brighter for a moment, and there was something like approval in its gaze. "You are not like the others," the dragon said, its voice filled with a quiet sadness. "Many have come before you, seeking my blood for their own gain. They saw me as nothing more than a prize to be claimed. But you see me as I am. For that, I am grateful." Galen's throat tightened, and he fought to hold back the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. He had come here to save his life, but now he realized that he could not take another's to do so. "Not this time." "I will not take your blood," Galen said, his voice stronger now, though his body trembled with exhaustion. "I won't add to your suffering." The dragon's massive form seemed to relax, its head lowering slightly as if in acknowledgement of his choice. "You have made a difficult decision, human," it said. "One that many would not have the strength to make. But know this, by sparing me, you have changed the course of your own fate." Galen didn't understand what the dragon meant, but he didn't ask. He was too tired, too broken, to question anything further. All he knew was that he couldn't bring himself to kill the last of a dying race. He couldn't live with that kind of blood on his hands. The dragon's eyes softened even further, and for a brief moment, Galen thought he saw a flicker of something like hope in their depths. Then, as a final gift, the dragon said, "I offer you what I can spare. You have shown me mercy, and for that, I will heal you." Before Galen could respond, the dragon's massive claw extended toward him. A single, glistening droplet of blood formed at the tip of one of its talons, glowing with an ethereal light. The dragon lowered its claw, and the droplet hovered in the air before Galen, suspended by some unseen force. "This will not bind you to me as my blood once would have," the dragon said. "It will heal your wounds, but you will remain free. Take it, and live." Galen hesitated for only a moment before he reached out, cupping the droplet in his hands. It was warm, almost comforting, and as it touched his skin, he felt a surge of energy coursing through him. The pain in his body melted away, his wounds closing as though they had never existed. He gasped, his eyes widening in shock as the exhaustion that had weighed him down for so long was lifted. For the first time in weeks, he felt whole again. The dragon watched him silently, its great head resting on the cold stone floor, eyes half closed in weariness. "Go now, human," it said softly. "Leave this place. You have earned your life." Galen stood, his body trembling not from weakness but from the overwhelming relief of being healed. He looked at the dragon one last time, a strange sense of sadness settling in his chest. He had come here to take the life of a creature he believed was evil, only to find a being more noble and tragic than anything he could have imagined. "Thank you," Galen said, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't forget this." The dragon didn't respond, its eyes closing as it settled back into the stillness of the cave. Galen knew this was the last time anyone would see the white dragon. It would remain here, alone, waiting for the end of its long, weary life. Galen turned and made his way back through the cave, the glow of the dragon's blood still lingering in his veins. As he stepped out into the cold, harsh light of the mountains, he felt different, not just physically, but in his very soul. He had come here a warrior, a man of violence and survival, but he was leaving with something far greater. The wind howled around him as he descended the mountain, the weight of his decision settling in. He had been given a second chance, but it was not one he would take lightly. He had spared the last of a dying race, and in doing so, he had found something within himself that he hadn't known existed. As he reached the bottom of the mountain, the sun began to rise, casting a golden light over the snow-covered peaks. Galen looked back one last time, his heart heavy but his spirit lighter than it had been in years. He would return to the world of men, but not as the man he had been before. He had found something far greater than the blood of a dragon. He had found mercy. And with that, he would live.